Hi, this is Marc Lesser, and I am excited to talk about finding clarity, how embracing the sacred supports well-being, relationships, and effectiveness. Just a little bit about myself. I sometimes describe myself as a stealth Zen priest or Zen teacher working in the business world. I happen to both live at the San Francisco Zen Center for 10 years. And I also went to business school and helped develop a mindful leadership, emotional intelligence program at Google. And I've taught mindfulness, meditation, leadership to companies all around the world. I've noticed that in general, I prefer workshops over talks because workshops mean that you are engaged. It's not just me talking. And I think my intention here is to, as much as possible, within this format, to do this as a kind of a mini workshop. So with that, I want to suggest that we start with a few minutes of sitting practice together. And this would mean turning off all of your other windows, anything you might be doing. I invite you to be completely here with me right now for this next 30 or 40 minutes. So what is it like to be here, just here with me? And let's do just a few minutes of sitting practice. I'll ring a bell to get us started. And with that bell, I invite you to pause. Sometimes think of this practice as a sacred pause, a dropping in, allowing yourself to be here, just now, right now. I know it's not so easy, but it's just making the effort and the aspiration to stop can help inform our lives, and bringing this same aspiration into all parts of our lives, like in the title of this talk, into our well-being, our relationships, and our effectiveness. So starting just by noticing the body, being aware of your face, maybe softening the muscles in your face, softening the jaw, relaxing the shoulders, chest, upper back. Again, being in the body. And noticing at the same time that breathing is happening. Breathing is happening without any effort at all. The breath is taking place right now. And allowing your breathing to be full and fluid without any holding back or restraining. And part of the attitude of this practice that we're cultivating is appreciating our bodies, appreciating our breath, letting thinking mind do its thing, but even being curious about whatever's happening with your thoughts right now. Letting thoughts come, let them go, whether your mind is busy or not so busy, just noticing. Can you notice? Can you appreciate busy mind or not busy mind? Appreciate being here, cultivating this attitude of appreciation. And simply breathing in, breathing out. Can you allow yourself right now to experience that nothing is lacking right now? That right now we have everything that we need. Nothing missing. No need to feel any sense of threat or lack of safety. Can you notice what does it feel like in the body to be fully safe? Even if you need to imagine that, can you imagine what it's like to be safe? No threat right now at all. Completely safe. Completely sufficient, even abundant. Nothing lacking. And can you feel, what does it feel like in the body to be connected? Connected with your heart, connected with all of life. And to me, this is the laying the ground for embracing the sacred. I don't think we can skip over feeling safe, abundant, and connected. And let's just sit together quietly for a minute or two. Again, noticing the breath, noticing the body, and cultivating this sense of appreciation, mixed with some warm-hearted curiosity with warm-heartedness. Right now, just for this short amount of time. And gently coming back, bringing your attention to being back here with me. And usually whether I'm doing a talk or a workshop, I like to begin with a couple of questions. And the first question is, what brings you here? What brings you here? And the second question is to take this first question and go a little bit deeper. What really brings you here? What brings you here, and what really brings you here? What is it that you're hoping to learn? Are there some practices that you'd like to add to your current life? Or maybe are there things you'd like to be letting go of? Letting go of any sense of anything lacking. And so I'm talking about here embracing the sacred, and maybe a little experiment, if you're willing, is to start by looking. If you hold up your right hand and just look at your hand as though you're seeing your hand for the first time. What is this? Is this you? Is this a part of you? Where did this hand come from? Do you own it? Who owns it? What is it? Where did it come from? And then maybe just a thought about what this hand was like the moment you were born. Probably obviously much smaller and softer. And maybe imagining this hand as though it were shortly before your last breath, seeing this hand in your old age. And then just coming back and seeing it right now, ordinary, just as a hand. But to me, this is I hope, gave you a little bit of experience of the sacred and the ordinary all happening right now in everything, right? Just simply our breath, our bodies, this hand. Quite amazing, don't you think? And also the ability that we have to be in these bodies, our ability to be aware of our breath, and the magic of our imaginations, that we can imagine what it was like to be a baby. We can imagine what it's like to be an old person. I was remembering I was once about to step into a room of about 60 executives from a company I was doing some leadership trainings with, and there was a lot of buzz in the room that the night before they had all gone to see a magician, and they were very excited about what they had done with this magician. I noticed I was getting a little nervous about how am I going to compete with this magic show that they had seen. And then it occurred to me, and I stepped up in front of this room of executives and said, I'm a magician also. And I quoted the Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, "The real miracle isn't to walk on water. The real miracle is to walk right here on earth. The real miracle isn't to walk on water. The real miracle is to walk right here on earth." Or the real miracle is to notice how sacred and ordinary everything is about our lives, about this breath, this body, and these hands. So what brings you here? And what really brings you here? And I think finding clarity and experiencing the sacred in some way begins by noticing that the world is not always what it seems. A hand is not just a hand. A breath is not just a breath. A tree on one level, we can look at it through the realm of science, and we can dissect it, and we can look at it as a biologist. But also, there's something about a tree that is sacred. I mean, just go and look at a tree. How did this happen? Who designed this? Go notice a tree as though seeing it for the first time. And I think there's something about this very basic practice bringing a sense of radical appreciation and freshness to everything that we see and do and experience. Right? So a tree is not just a tree. A human being, our hands, everything. Birth, life, death, blood, hearts, stones, and sky. From a certain perspective, these are all extremely ordinary and at the same time mysterious. So to me, this is the starting point for finding clarity and experiencing the sacred, is to lean in and unpack and see just how ordinary, we do have to live in the ordinary world of paying our bills and getting things done and taking out the garbage. But what if even paying the bills and taking out the garbage were sacred acts, right? That we can bring this attitude and approach of radical appreciation into everything that we do. So I want to talk about, well, how do we do this? How do we practice with this finding more clarity, embracing the sacred, bringing this approach, this mindset into all of our relationships, all parts of our family and work life, and into and seeing that the more we can access this world, the world of reality, the world where there's no difference between the ordinary and the sacred, the more productive we can be, the better leaders we can be. I think this is a recent discovery that is being made throughout the world. This explosion of interest in mindfulness in the workplace, of meditation in the workplace, of bringing one's full humanity into everything that we do. Obviously, in our family life and in our friendships, but it takes practice. I think we've all been trained to either not see the world of the sacred, of the how amazing everything is, or we've been trained to separate these things, that the sacred is something that happens in a different place than our workplaces or our families or our ordinary worlds. So to me, this is the secret. It's like the real miracle is to walk right here on earth. The real miracle is to see everything as sacred. So I want to present what I think are a few more kind of grounded practices, things that we can do, things that we can cultivate in all parts of our lives that can help us come back again and again, to help us see through the mirage of the lack of sacred, or the mirage of there being any difference or separateness between what is ordinary and what is sacred. So the first practice is be curious, not furious. Be curious, not furious. And I just, a friend of mine was just telling me about a study that was done. This is a study of older people, people who were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, who all reported that the last 3 years had been the happiest years of their lives, even people in their 80s and 90s. And all these people reported, I think, the high levels of curiosity. What a beautiful, simple, undervalued practice. And I pair it with be curious, not furious, in that it's especially good to be curious when we feel hurt or angry, where our fight or flight habits or patterns are showing up. So to be curious about our own state of mind, to be curious about whatever's happening, to notice what is this, to become really intimately familiar with our feelings, with this body, to be curious about what is ordinary and what is sacred. So this, I think, is the starting point for finding clarity, the starting point for this practice of embracing the sacred, right? Curiosity. Not only didn't curiosity kill the cat, but I suspect many cats' lives were saved through the practice of curiosity. And the second practice is to what I call drop the story. And what this means is to become familiar with our own emotional lives and how we are generally consciously and unconsciously turning our feelings and emotions into narratives, into stories. I remember a couples therapist I worked with for some time, in which she was a bit like a broken record, that in wanting to develop a healthier relationship with my partner, she kept coming back to suggesting that I drop the story. Right, whatever my story is about what I wanted or needed from my wife, from this other person, to try on dropping it, try on letting it go. And a close relative of this practice of dropping the story is what I call the practice of you go first. Whatever it is we are wanting from other people. And this, I think, is in all parts of our lives. So I say this a lot in the work I do with business leaders. You want more appreciation? Well, appreciate another person, appreciate others. You want to be recognized more? Recognize others. You want more of people's time and attention? Give them your time and your attention. But this requires not sticking to your story. It requires, if not dropping it, at least loosening it a bit. So, again, this whole realm of sacred practice and ordinary practice is, knowing our stories. In fact, there's a famous prescription, famous maybe in a fairly narrow slice of the world of Zen students and Zen practitioners, but Dogen, who was the 13th century a great teacher of Zen in Japan, once said, to study the way is to study ourselves. And to study ourselves is to go beyond the selves, to go beyond ourselves. And to go beyond ourselves is to feel our radical connectedness to everything and everyone. And right, so, and I think what he means, right, to study the way with a capital W is to study the way of being a full, awakened human being, a human being who is not caught by the duality of the ordinary or the sacred. So this practice, be curious, not furious, and drop the story. And the third practice is this practice. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, but it's harder than it seems, right? The practice of listening, the practice of listening for understanding. So maybe right now, I would suggest pausing, taking a breath, and listening to yourself. How are you doing right now? How are my words influencing you or not influencing you? Again, what's happening with your thoughts? So this practice of deep listening, starting with listening to ourselves, but then once we can bring in curiosity and dropping the story, we can really be curious about what other people are saying, feeling, experiencing, right? What is this other person's experience? This is, I think, the simple and radical practice of listening for understanding. I was always amazed in the work that I did with business leaders. I've done many, many trainings with Google engineers. And I would have them find a partner, and each of them would listen to the other person speak about something that mattered usually. But for 3 minutes of listening without interrupting, without asking questions, was kind of mind blowing. That they had realized, it made them realize how often they weren't really listening, especially at places like Google, where the emphasis is about getting things done, about being smart, about being competitive. But what they found was that through listening, they were smarter. They could get more done. They could collaborate. They didn't have to compete. They could collaborate, and more things got done. So the fourth practice is what I call mind the gaps. Mind the gaps. And this is noticing what is and what it is you're wanting to develop or wanting to create. This is, you might want to be a more creative writer, a more creative speaker. You might want to write a book. You might be wanting to have a certain culture in your family life or in your work life. So these gaps are the difference between what actually is and what you are aspiring to create or develop or to cultivate, right? So noticing how are you doing? How are your relationships now? Which ones are healthy? Which could use more work and attention? And almost by definition, noticing these gaps between what is and what you're aspiring to, it's uncomfortable. Who wants to notice what needs work? But to me, this is such a powerful core practice, right? That you can notice the gaps without being frustrated. You can notice the gaps without fight or flight. You can bringing these practices of curiosity and story dropping and listening to being aware of the gaps. A couple of years ago, I was noticing a gap that I had with my grown daughter. There were some misunderstandings that had happened, some pretty big communication misunderstandings, and she had been rather angry with me and pulling away, and we had work to do, and we were over time working on building trust and building closeness. And I started a conversation with her that I call sometimes the 4 most important words. And these words are, how are we doing? How are we doing? I find in many of my executive coaching clients, I suggest this as a practice with your colleagues, the people who work for you, the people who you work for, to come back again to asking, how are we doing? How are we doing in our vision of what we're trying to achieve, as well as how we're trying to achieve it? How are we doing? In the business world, it can look like, what does success look like? Or what can I do? What can we do to have a more effective working relationship? So these are all kind of sub-practices of mind the gap. The fifth practice is to cultivate a clear vision. What is it you are, what brings you here, and what really brings you here? What is it you're wanting to cultivate and develop internally in terms of your own state of mind, your own presence, how you deal perhaps with conflict, your level of courage, your ability to have a more still, focused, and concentrated mind. Yeah, how would you like to show up in the world? And again, in the what kind of family would you like to have? What's your vision statement? Do you have a vision statement for your family? Are you clear in the world of work what you want to accomplish? What does success look like? This is all part of a vision. I think I was 20 years old when I first came across the book by Abraham Maslow called Toward a Psychology of Being, in which he describes a study that he did of what it was that made certain people superior, or he used the word self-actualized, more self-actualized, the ability to feel greater feelings, both greater pain, pleasure, grieving, appreciation. And I recognized that I developed a really strong vision. I wanted to be one of those people. And I wondered, why didn't everyone want to be one of those people? And I continue to this day to devote my life in a way to actualizing myself and helping others to be more actualized, which again, I think this is the practice of finding clarity and embracing the sacred. Some of Maslow's vision that he expressed about what it was that made a self-actualized person, he talked about things like, and measured things like, a clear perception of reality, increased acceptance of self and others and nature, increased spontaneity, ability to solve problems, increased freshness, appreciation, and richness of emotional reactions. So these are just some examples of human visions. But what do you want to? What does success look like? What does happiness look like? What does well-being look like? So the sixth practice is what I call turning breakdowns into breakthroughs, right? So this is how we deal with difficulty, pain, discomfort, failure, part of the human condition, pain and possibility. And so much, I think, of what we call mindfulness practice, or what I would call this practice of finding clarity, is how we not avoid pain and conflict and difficulty, the uncertainty of being a human being, the certainty that we will lose everything and everyone. How can we turn these difficulties, these uncertainties, into possibility, into real richness, into real appreciation, and to see that this is the real richness of our human lives, is how we deal with discomfort and pain. And the seventh and last practice here is don't wait. Don't wait. Right now, practice with living a more non-dual, clear, sacred life. No need to wait. It's all available to you, to me, to all of us right now. In Zen practice places, there is a what's called a han. It's a big piece of wood that's hit with a hammer, and it's used as a signal to call people to the meditation hall. And calligraphied on it is something like, birth and death are serious matters. Don't waste time. Don't wait. So don't wait. Don't wait to feel your own sense of radical safety. Don't wait to feel that there is nothing lacking in your life right now. Don't wait to feel this sacred sense of connectedness. And I want to end with a short poem And this poem is by a Persian poet from the 13th century named Hafez. He lived around the same time as Rumi, the other kind of known Persian poet. And this short poem is called Tripping Over Joy. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that God has just made such a fantastic move that the saint now continually is tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, "I surrender." Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. What's the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that God has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is continually tripping over joy and bursting in laughter and saying, "I surrender." Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you think you have 1,000 serious moves. Yeah. So we live in the human realm where, of course, we all have 1,000 serious moves, right? We're always thinking and scheming and plotting and improving. But stepping into the life of the sacred is a kind of surrender, an experience of joy and appreciation right in the midst of the sacred, the ordinary. Again, you can come back whenever you want to looking at your hand, this amazing hand. You can come back whenever you want to looking into the eyes of your friend or child or parent and seeing, letting the world come to you, letting the world of the ordinary and the sacred unfold, and test out if you live more in this way of embracing the sacred, how does it impact your well-being? How does it impact and influence all your relationships outside of work, inside of work? How does it impact your productivity, your effectiveness? I think we've been, we've been tricked. We've been tricked to think that we have to be hard on ourselves. And I suggest, I've noticed with the many, many people that I get to work with, that bringing this radical sense of the sacred, appreciation, nothing missing, is a beautiful way to heal ourselves, the people around us, and I think it's the only way that we're going to create the kind of world that we all want to live in. So please try on these practices. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that presentation by Marc. He's a wonderful teacher. I'd like to invite you to join us again Thursday next week when we will have Sasha Graham speaking on tarot and soulful shadow work. I do hope you can join me then. In the meantime, stay safe and be well. Good night to you all.